Good evening, and welcome to everyone joining us here at John's Auditorium on the campus of Hampden-Sydney College, and to those watching online. My name is Tim Diet, and I currently serve as the Dean of the Faculty for Hampden-Sydney. We're delighted that you have chosen to spend an hour of your time hearing from the two candidates, John McGuire and Gloria Witt, to represent Virginia's 5th District in the United States House of Representatives. Thank you to our candidates for joining us this evening, and thanks to everyone who participated in planning for this event. It's been a team effort with persons involved from public safety, facilities, communications, the Office of Student Affairs, the Department of Government and Foreign Affairs, and the History Department. Special thanks go out to Cameron Carey as well as the Wilson Center for Leadership in the Public Interest and its director, Vinton Bruton, for organizing this event. The Wilson Center for Leadership was established in 1996 and was named for Lieutenant General Samuel V. Wilson, former president of the college. The center provides students with opportunities, such as this evening's event, to gain an understanding of the challenges confronting the United States and the world today so that they may become tomorrow's CEOs, business founders, military officers, and civic and political leaders. Before I turn things over to Vinton Bruton, please stand and join me in honoring our country by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As previously agreed upon by the two candidates, Vinton Bruton will now flip a coin to determine which candidate will speak first.
Good evening and welcome to Hampden-Sydney College. I'm Richard Panley and I'm the Dean of Students here. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to serve as a moderator for this forum. This college, which soon will celebrate its 250th anniversary, was founded on the eve of the American Revolution and has been guided since its founding by the mission of forming good men and good citizens, preparing young men to serve, lead, and sustain the republic envisioned by our founders. Two of whom, Patrick Henry and James Madison, were chartering trustees of Hampden-Sydney in 1775. James Madison also served as the first representative to Congress from Virginia's 5th District. Here at Hampden-Sydney, rhetoric, character refinement, civic virtue, civil discourse, the freedoms of thought, expression, and speech, and critical thinking are among the many pillars which define our academic and co-curricular programs. Thus, we welcome the opportunity to host this forum, and we thank our candidates for their willingness to participate. This evening, I'll be asking each candidate a list of questions, 8 in total, which have been submitted by Hampden-Sydney students studying in our government and foreign affairs and history departments. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the same question, which I will repeat for each candidate. Dr. Caroline Emmons, seated at the front of the stage, who's our Elliott Professor of History, will serve as timekeeper, and I ask each candidate to observe Dr. Emmons' instructions. When time begins, Dr. Emmons will hold up a green card. When 30 seconds are remaining, a yellow card will be shown, and then when time is up, a red card will be shown and the bell will ring. Hampton-Sydney is home to the second oldest debate society in the United States, known as the Union Philanthropic Literary Society, or UPLS, which was founded in 1789. The UPLS membership has generously offered their historic debate bell for our use here this evening. At the conclusion of the question and answer period, each candidate will have 5 minutes to offer closing remarks. Again, I ask that each candidate follow the previously mentioned instructions offered by Dr. Emmons. During the forum, I ask our audience members please exercise respect for our candidates as they are speaking by refraining from any exclamatory remarks, vocal disruption, or other disturbances, and to please save your applause for the conclusion of the question and answer period and after all closing remarks have been made. Having won the coin toss, we'll begin our first question with Ms. Witt.
Thank you.
So the first set of questions, Ms. Witt, are directed at the 5th District specifically. And the first question I have from our students is, the cost of living has skyrocketed.
Are we doing intros first?
No, sir. The first question that I have, Ms. Witt, is the cost of living has skyrocketed in the last 5 years. What are your individual goals and plans to support legislation to bring economic relief to Virginia's 5th District?
Awesome. Thank you, Hampton-Sydney, for arranging this debate. Thank you, Senator McGuire, for your military service. I want to acknowledge that. Now, regarding inflation and economic growth, inflation is real. The price of all of our goods and services is high. I look at it as some elements of corporate price gouging, and so what can we do about it from a policy perspective? I'm supporting policies that will drive down pharmaceutical costs. I'm supporting legislation that will help us with affordable housing, because we know that housing is one of these lost American dreams. And I also believe that when it comes to economic growth for this district, 11,000 square miles, 24 localities, and with 3 large cities, and most of our district is rural. And so how do we create a thriving community? To me, it's about reimagining education and creating career technical skills for the 60% of young people that leave high school without a college background, nor will they get one or go to the military. So for me, it's about expanding career technical skills that will provide a living wage job that will impact the economics, because current businesses are telling me that they can't find a talented workforce. And if we grow our skill sets, they can make a living wage and therefore create opportunity for the members of District 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Witt, the cost of living has skyrocketed, Senator McGuire, the cost of living has skyrocketed in the last 5 years. What are your individual goals and plans to support legislation to bring economic relief to Virginia's 5th District?
Sure. Well, I would certainly agree. If the government was a business, they'd be out of business. I have a 26-year business. My wife and I celebrated 26 years of that business, helping teams and individuals, including the Hampton City Lacrosse team. We celebrate 26 years of signing both sides of the paycheck last September. Everything is more expensive. Young people are telling me they have an app that they search every morning to see where the cheapest gas is. They weren't doing that 4 years ago. And 4 years ago, interest rates were around 2%. They've gone over 7%. Inflation was under 2% and has gone as high as 10%. The solution to a problem is not more government. The free market works, but when the government gets in the way, it doesn't work. If you guys want to have retirement, and most of y'all are young, but we got some folks that are not so young, there are folks coming out of retirement because they can't afford the fixed income they have. And so what we need to do is get energy dominance. We were almost energy dominant 4 years ago, and then we shut down ANWR, stopped fracking, and we started buying fossil fuels from countries that don't like us. So they were making money, we were spending money, and that makes inflation go up. It makes your investments worth less, and it makes harder for everyday Americans to live, work, and raise their family in peace. So I will support legislation to make us energy dominant and reduce spending.
Thank you both.
And thank you, Ms. Witt, for participating in this forum.
Senator McGuire, we'll start with you for the second question. Many residents in the 5th District live in rural areas. What challenges do you believe are unique to rural areas, and how do you plan to address challenges that rural areas face, such as poverty and homelessness?
Well, it's been an honor being a state senator in the General Assembly. I just received a Policy Maker of the Year award. I wish I could tell you that the idea was my idea, but it's almost always someone else's idea. Our job is to listen to you and be your voice. And basically, we developed a policy that makes the 4th Wednesday of April, CTE, Career Technical Education, sign-in day. Not every child is meant to go to college, but I think as educators, as parents, our responsibility is to prepare young people for life. So I would encourage and support legislation that would help with the trades, because I knock a lot of doors in these rural areas, and they tell me that their child is not coming back to Farmville because they can't find jobs. They're not coming back to Louisa because they can't find jobs. And certainly it's a very ag, forestry, impactful district. Our number 3 income in Virginia, $21 billion, is forestry. And those folks tell me that diesel prices were $2 a gallon several years ago, and they've gone as high as $6. And so they're having a hard time paying their bills. They're having a hard time paying their employees. And so we need to enact legislation that will make us energy dominant, as I said before, and lower the cost of fuel and living.
Thank you. Ms. Witt, many residents in the 5th District live in rural areas. What challenges do you believe are unique to rural areas, and how do you plan to address challenges that rural areas face, such as poverty and homelessness?
Well, first, I want to go back to the first question and this idea of inflation. Inflation is real, and businesses are making more profits than ever before. When it comes to fracking, based on the news reports, our economy is in the best shape it's been in years. The highest stock market, more people employed. We are drilling, baby, drilling. And so this idea about lowering prices through fossil fuels, et cetera, I believe it's a myth. So let's get that straight right, and let's be clear about that. The economists are saying that our economy is the best ever, and this gloom and doom is very interesting coming from the GOP side. Now, regarding what am I going to do, or what do I see as the problems of our community, basically affordable housing, health care, getting broadband through, and CTE is at the heart of it. Senator McGuire has mentioned that he's passed some law or legislation to support career technical education. Yes, career technical education is happening throughout the district. The challenge is we're not producing enough skilled workers to satisfy the growth that's needed in these rural area. We're dealing with 20% poverty rates in District 5 and the median income of $50,000. We've got to skill ourselves up and recognize that 60% of our young people leave high school in May, and they are qualified for the lowest paying jobs available because they don't have a career technical skill. So he has been in the legislature. They're doing something, but it's not enough. We've got to reimagine education. Thank you.
Ms. Witt, what role do you believe the federal government has to play in education policy, and how do you plan to support K-12 and post-secondary education in the 5th District?
Thank you. How do I plan to support it? It starts with thinking about it holistically. As I mentioned earlier, we're not producing enough talents out of our K through 12 system. So how do you fix it? You got to pay teachers what they're worth. You've got to look at the curriculum. You got to create and bring in subject matter experts from the corporate sector to be the teachers, and that means looking at licensing people that may or may not have a four-year degree, but they got a subject matter expert skill that that our high schools need. It's hard to get a worker from corporate America making $80,000 to come into a high school to make 40. So all of this misalignment need to be dealt with front and center. So I want to use my voice, because I've been listening, to go to Congress, to get in these spaces and fight to get our career technical systems off the ground, and more importantly, create a whole new way of educating our young people. They're going to school every day, and we're leaving so many young people behind. We are doing a disservice to our young people. So you wonder why they are losing hope and opportunity. They don't see themselves ever owning a home or purchasing their first cars and getting an apartment, because it's all attached to skills. We've got to tool up our young people, and we have to start in schools and not deviate money to charter schools and lab schools, because 80% of our young people go to public schools. We need to fix it. Thank you.
Please hold your applause. Thank you. Senator McGuire, what role do you believe the federal government has to play in education policy, and how do you plan to support K-12 and post-secondary education in the 5th District?
Sure, thank you for the question. I'd like to go back to the fracking for just a second. Energy is going to solve a lot of these problems. Instead of spending money, we're making money. We need to be energy dominant. There are 13 ships, you can look it up. There are 13 ships in the Gulf of Mexico that their job is to do fracking. They have not been issued a permit at all in the Biden-Harris administration. Let's move on to education. Our children should be taught, like Governor Glenn Youngkin says, how to think, not what to think. These divisive ideologies coming out of the federal government in our schools is wrong. I'm a Navy SEAL. I've been in some very dangerous places for our country. I'm 56 years old. I've seen a lot of things I don't want you to see. And when one of our delegates, Tim Anderson, read a book that's in an elementary school on the floor of the General Assembly, I wish I could unhear what he read. I believe that the schools should be preparing young people for life, and if you graduate a trade school or you go to college and you can't get a decent job in 5 years, then we are failing you. So our job is to prepare young people for life, not teach them divisive ideologies. And I'd like to send more responsibility to education to the local level to support the needs of that community.
Thank you. Moving on to our second set of questions. These will focus primarily on national and foreign policy. Again, these questions were submitted by Hampton-Sydney students. Beginning with you, Senator McGuire. Many Americans are concerned about the increased number of asylum seekers in the United States, as well as the large number of unauthorized immigrants who live in this country. How do you believe the federal government should respond to this problem?
Strongly, very strongly. You know, as a veteran, you know, I believe in limited government. That's a government accountable to we the people, not the other way around. We've all seen the lawfare and everything going on. We are less safe as a people at the local, state, and federal level, and I dare say in the world. You know, 4 years ago, we did not have what's going on in Ukraine. We did not have what was going on in Israel. We did not have what was going on right this day in Ethiopia. These things were not going on. And statistics just came out that 13,000 to 15,000 murderers have been released into our country with this open border. It's crazy. And during Hurricane Helene, the FEMA said we ran out of money, but we might give you $750, while they gave Lebanon $157 million. And these America Last policies are horrible. Lake and Riley, we've heard many daughters robbed, raped, and killed. Right down the road in the 5th Congressional District, a 33-year-old illegal alien released from jail 4 times, raped a 14-year-old girl. At what point is enough enough? Now, I totally support President Trump's idea of taking these dangerous criminals and taking them back to their countries. Now, their countries say we don't want them, and these guys say they don't want to go. I would drop them off on the beach and say, that's your problem. Our number one goal is to keep you safe at the local, state, and federal level. Right down the road in Richmond, Virginia, they say murder rates are up 77% because it seems like our friends on the left believe police are bad, criminals are good, and nobody cares about the victims. So we've got a lot of work to do, and I will support legislation that fully supports our law enforcement and our military to keep the American people and our interest abroad safe.
Thank you. Ms. Witt, many Americans are concerned about the increased number of asylum seekers in the United States, as well as the large number of unauthorized immigrants who live in this country. How do you believe the federal government should respond to this problem?
They did respond, and our former president made a phone call and stopped the Border Act from being passed because they wanted to use immigration as a political pawn, and they are using it to demonize human beings. At the end of the day, immigration is a strategic tool. We need more bodies to get the work done and to build our economy. Is it broken? Yes, and it's broken intentionally because Senator Lanford passed a worked bipartisan to pass legislation to fix it. And how do you fix it? You hire resources to process people. You implement technology to speed up the process. And when it comes to the asylum process, the Border Act reduced a 7-year process down to 90 days. And my friends, GOP, decided they put a stop to it. So who's really got a problem here and who's not living in reality? Yes, not everyone that comes across the border is, let's say, they're not criminals, they're not murderers. Are there some? Of course, because we're living in a real world here. Most of us are anyway. So for me, it's about fixing the problem with resources, with technology. You evaluate, you assess, and you get them working so that they can be tax-paying people for those who qualify. When it comes to the asylum question, let's get them in and process them quickly and get them out if they don't qualify. That's how you fix them. You don't demonize. And he mentioned something about divisive practices in school. Let's try divisive practices in Congress and in the legislation, because that's where it's happening at, and it's starting with myths perpetrated by Donald Trump. Let's face reality.
Thank you, Ms. Witt. Starting with you, Ms. Witt, for this question, the Biden-Harris administration has sought to advance equity throughout the federal government. How do you understand equity, and do you support this as a goal?
Yes, I support equity as a goal. You know, we got to where we are as a people, African Americans, people of color, because of civil rights and the efforts to create equality after starting from a handicap of enslavement. And without diversity, equity, and inclusion, you end up with, let's just say, power brokers in charge. Equity to me is meeting people where they are. If my parents didn't have a college education, it's hard for me then to get that education. It's a whole different way forward. I like to think of it as if everybody won a pair of shoes and everybody got a Nike size 7, how would that feel? That's equality. Equity would give a person what they need. You might get a size 7, you might get a size 6, and you might get a size 12 because it fits. America is an inclusive place. It's never going to go back, no matter how much they dream about putting the ketchup back in the bottle. It's not going to happen. We are an inclusive America, and we're never going to change that. No matter how much Project 2025 might try to get us to go back, it's not happening. And therefore, we have to appreciate the differences, because that's what make us powerful. That's what make us unique. And that is why I want to be in Congress, to represent your voice. because we need different voices in the room because we come from different places and different beginnings. And that's why I appreciate equity. And we all need to begin to embrace it more. We have moved from equality now to a conversation about equity. Give people what they need to thrive.
Senator McGuire, the Biden-Harris administration has sought to advance equity throughout the federal government. How do you understand equity, and do you support this as a goal?
Well, what I would say is, as a veteran, as an American, I love our country and I love the American people. If somebody saved your life on the battlefield, you wouldn't care if they were male or female, tall or short, pink or blue, Democrat, Republican, Independent, we're all people. And if you have a good idea, you have a good idea. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. You can call yourself a Democrat or Independent, Republican, but if you have a good idea, you have a good idea. I believe in equal opportunity for all Americans. What I do not agree with is equal outcome. If I spend 10 years with a violin and you spend 2 weeks with a violin, we cannot be equal in that. When I look at diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm against that. It should be meritocracy. If a plane goes down in the jungle and there's one direction you go to save your whole team, do you want someone who's never been in the jungle? Or do you want a Navy SEAL who's an expert on survival to keep the team alive? It should be based on merit. And I don't care if you're pink or blue or what. If you're the best heart surgeon, it should be meritocracy. And so to me, I believe diversity, equity, inclusion is a Marxist idea. And what I mean by that is you take the equity and substitute it for Marxism, it fits. It's trying to get equal outcome without equal input or equal work. So equal opportunity for everybody, absolutely, but I do not believe in equal outcome for everyone. It just doesn't work. It's a way to fail. And if you saw the failed, thank God, by the grace of God, the assassination attempt on Trump and Butler, how tall is him? 6'4" or something like that, and they have very short people trying to protect him. It makes no sense. So it should be based on merit, qualifications to do the job.
Our next question is, how would you vote on further funding of defense bills to aid in the war in Ukraine and Israel?
Well, I got to tell you, I do believe that we have a lot of problems going on in our country. And so I think there are many things that we can do with our dollars, but when I see this wall, that we need to build the wall and secure our border, and when I see folks taking those metal walls down and selling them for pennies on the dollar, walls work. We need to put our money into helping the people that are victims of Hurricane Helene. I'm not sure what the best solution is, but I do know 4 years ago we didn't have the problems in Ethiopia, Ukraine, and Israel. And I think we need, well, President Trump, of all the politicians, I've listened to all the world leaders, what they say about Ukraine. And he said the best thing anyone has said, because remember, our job is to be your voice and represent everyone in the 5th Congressional District, not some of you. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, or Independent, I love you. But we're here to represent all of you. And he said the best thing anyone said. He said, I just want people to stop dying. And I've had face-to-face, close conversations with President Trump. And he said, John, you're a Navy SEAL. You're only going to get 6 hours sleep in the first 100 days. God willing, he wins, and God willing, I'm your congressman. And he says, you're only going to get 6 hours. He doesn't want to take 4 years to turn this country around. He wants our young people to have a better future. He wants all Americans to be able to live, work, and raise their family in peace. So we need to end these foreign wars and bring people together in peace.
Thank you. Ms. Witt, how would you vote on further funding of defense bills to aid in the war in Ukraine and Israel?
I'm trying to get my head around what Senator McGuire just said. That was, what do you call it? Food salad. Yeah, that was food salad at its finest. A couple of things, I wish I had something to write on, but I don't. What would be my solution for funding the wars? Ukraine is fighting a war for democracy. They understand it. Russia came in and violated. We said we would support them, and as far as I'm concerned, we're all in, and we must continue to support them. Because if they make it to Poland, our ally, now our sons and daughters will be at war. So I am all in for fully funding whatever it takes. Regarding Israel and Hamas, That situation is complicated, and it's horrible. Israel had a right to enter and to protect itself. At this point, we need a ceasefire. Women and children are dying in massive numbers, and it's complicated. And quite frankly, let's just say our legislators who will handle it now, since I'm the newcomer to the political world, I would say I need to learn more. But we have to have a ceasefire. We need to release the hostages, and we have to have a long-term strategy for a two-state solution. So within that bucket, we've got to seek peace, because it's getting hotter and hotter in that part of the world. And so we've got to keep talking. We got to keep the channels open, and hopefully with the new events today, we can move forward toward ceasefire, release the hostages, and eventually things will begin to settle down because we don't want to spread the fighting.
Thank you, Ms. Witt. Our final set of questions pertain to civility and political polarization, and beginning with you, Ms. Witt, the first question I have is, as we prepare for another presidential election, do you believe that Americans should have confidence in our federal election system? Will you promise to support the declared winner of the 2024 presidential contest?
I promise to support the election results, period. This is what got me off the bench to start with. Our democracy is under attack. We are challenged to understand truth from myth, and we have to recognize the structures of our election process, and all this screaming and yelling about election integrity after more than 60 legal challenges. Most of the GOP still cannot accept the fact that Donald Trump lost the election. I'm not certain where my opponent stands on it, but it'll be interesting. I know he made himself available for the January 6th insurrection. He was there at the Capitol. I don't know what his purpose was, but he was definitely on the grounds. And just recently, as to yesterday, the former president that endorses him, and from what I can gather, he's lock, stop, and step with the former president on his ideology that basically rolls back freedoms, questions democracy, and intends to repeal or get rid of the Constitution. We're at a serious point. We're at a serious point. So when you go to vote, it's not about Republicans and Democrats and independents. It's a test of your belief in the Constitution. That's number one. And number two, it's a fight for your rights and freedoms, because the GOP, as it is currently shaped, because it's not your grandma and granddaddy's Republican Party. I'm sorry, it's gone. It's been gone now about 15 years. We are fighting for the Constitution of America. It's not about parties. It's about freedom and rights. And I would say that the GOP is positioning right now to contest the election when
Thank
he
you,
loses.
Ms. Witt. Senator McGuire, as we prepare for another presidential election, do you believe that Americans should have confidence in our federal election system? Will you promise to support the declared winner of the 2024 presidential contest?
Well, first of all, I need to make it clear to everyone who studies U.S. government that we are a constitutional republic. And as a veteran, I swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And if I'm at D.C. using my constitutional rights to be heard, there's nothing wrong with that. The Democrats have weaponized that for political purposes, and it's just a terrible thing about the division in our country. I have been on privileges and elections. I didn't know anybody, by the way, even broke the law or went into the Capitol until I got home. But if you were there, I saw every different race, every background, every religion, and American flags and walkers to put everybody into one group because they went there to be heard. You should be heard. It's in our Constitution. It's the First Amendment. You have a right to be heard. Over the years, even people remember Hillary Clinton challenged her election. There is nothing wrong with challenging irregularities until you're satisfied. And you think about this, we had this pandemic. Some people call it the plandemic.
Oh,
Now listen up. Under the guise of the plandemic or the pandemic, they came up with election season in Virginia. Not election day, but 45 days. In one state, California, they said if you want to have a voter ID, you should be arrested for that. So, they changed the rules, and if they were only for the pandemic, then after the pandemic, they should change it back, and they didn't. So let's see what the elections are, and if it's fair, and I'll totally support that.
Thank you. For our final question, starting with Senator McGuire, political polarization has been rising in Congress for decades. If elected, can you envision yourself crafting bipartisan legislation? If so, on what issues would you work with members of Congress from the opposing party?
So my answer is absolutely, but talk is cheap. I'd say look at my record in the General Assembly. Every year for 6 years, I've passed bills where every single Democrat, every single Republican voted yes. And 2018, might have been 19, it took me 3 years to get this bill passed, and it was for substitute teachers doing a background investigation. I worked with the FBI, the state police, and everybody else. And the first year, I failed. Second year, I failed. On the third year, we had one-party Democrat rule. And I said, look, if you'd rather a Democrat carry this bill, I'm okay with it because it's good for Virginia. And they say, no one works as hard as you. And we passed that bill, and out of 140 legislators, I got the Policy Maker of the Year award. And what it does, it says that if you are a substitute teacher and you teach at multiple schools, instead of doing multiple background investigations, paying multiple fees, you do one background investigation that follows you wherever you go. It saves time, saves money, makes life easy for our substitute teachers, and it's a conservative bill in one-party Democrat rule. And so I can see working with them on veterans. I think Ms. Witt and I both support our veterans. I think things that would make it easier for folks to pay for energy or lower cost and taxes, we would certainly agree with that. I'm sure there's a few things, but again, if we treat each other with respect and work as a team, we can turn a no into a yes. We can turn the impossible to a possible. And God willing, I'm your congressman. I can't wait to get to work to make life better for everybody in the 5th Congressional District.
Thank you. Ms. Witt, political polarization has been rising in Congress for decades. If elected, can you envision yourself crafting bipartisan legislation? And if so, on what issues would you work with members of Congress from the opposing party?
Yes, I would want to work bipartisan to move the country forward. It's one of the reasons I decided to run for this role. It's a community advocacy role. You're the voice of District 5, and my skill set is listening, collaborating, driving decisions, and moving people and organizations forward. That's what I do. I've been doing it for 40 years. So regarding legislation, I guess when I take a look at Senator McGuire's track record from 2020, he spent a lot of time making it more expensive for renters to protect them against price gouging from their landlords. He spent a lot of time saying no to reserving personal property, family homes from Wall Street and the developers. He spent a lot of time saying no to expanding renewable energy, which is a solution, one of the elements that will help us address climate change. It's real, folks. We have to deal with climate change. He spent a lot of time saying no to every piece of gun legislation, the #1 health crisis for young people who show up at schools every day, colleges, worried about whether or not they'll get home, and saying no to common sense gun legislation. I'm all for common sense gun control. But he said no to people who had mental issues. He said no to making sure guns are not on school property, and on and on and on. So yes, I'm all for bipartisan, and we need to codify women's health, reproductive health. So I would gladly work with bipartisan to make that happen. I would gladly work to restore the John Lewis Freedom Act I will gladly work to bring us together and move this district and this country forward.
Thank you, Ms. Witt. So this concludes the question and answer period. Thank you both for your thoughtful and engaging remarks. Each candidate will now have 5 minutes to offer closing remarks. Again, Dr. Emmons, seated at the front of the stage, will serve as timekeeper. A yellow card will be shown this time when there's 1 minute remaining, and a red card will be shown when time is up, followed by the ringing of the bell. Having won the coin toss, Ms. Witt, you can go first if you wish.
Okay.
Or would you like Senator McGuire to go first?
I'd like Senator McGuire to go
Okay.
first.
Go ahead,
Sure.
Senator McGuire. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm State Senator John McGuire, and it's an honor to be here tonight. And first off, I'd like to thank God for the blessings in my life. Man, I'd like to thank Hampton-Sydney for this beautiful facility tonight. I'd like to thank the students at Hampton-Sydney University. You guys are the future leaders of our country, and you're showing democracy in action here tonight. I'd like to thank our moderator. I'd like to thank Ms. Witt for participating in this forum. And by the way, we may disagree, but I think we're both very respectful of each other, and I think that's the way it should be. And however this goes, we'll be working together, I'm sure. I think for you guys, and most importantly, we got to thank my best friend, my beautiful wife, Tracy McGuire. Let's give everybody a round of applause for that. All of you. For you to understand how I look, all the lenses I use to look at legislation, I want to tell you a little bit of my biography. Because of alcohol issues, I'm 56 years old. I've never tasted alcohol, tried cigarettes. My sister and I were abandoned when I was 5 years old. I spent time in foster homes, 9 different elementary schools. My grandfather fought in World War II. Him and my grandmother rescued me, my older sister and I, and raised us until my dad got sober. My mother passed away during the pandemic. And my father and I have a really good relationship. And during that time, I felt called to serve our country as a Navy SEAL. And everyone told me, you're too small, you're not strong enough. Typically 200 men per SEAL class, $20 million to train one SEAL. Usually 20 people graduate. One class graduated 0 out of 200. We had 200 in my class, 19 graduated. I was number 4. And what we learned, it's not what you look like, it's what you fight like. I get out of the Navy, I start a business from scratch. We train teams, individuals to become stronger, healthier, and more confident. We've been a small part of 18 Division I championships, and we worked with Ray Rostan and your lacrosse team years ago. He got 3rd in the country. And by the way, a very famous alum here is Dean Cheatham. He is one of the strongest men I know. He talks about Hampton-Sydney all the time. He is suffering from brain cancer right now. I hope that everybody here will pray for Dean Cheatham. What I learned is that there is no substitute for hard work. I became one of the youngest snipers in Navy SEAL history. I served in some of the most dangerous places in the world. I started this business is going great, and I had a tragic accident. I used to do 20 one-finger pull-ups. I was undefeated on the Navy SEAL East Coast obstacle course, and just like that, I broke my neck. It almost makes me throw up to tell you this, but I was completely paralyzed. They had a woman die next to me in ICU. They told my wife, Tracy, Mr. McGuire will not make it through the night, and if he does, he'll never use his arms and legs again. I was in a wheelchair. It took me about a year to walk. I believe God gave me a second chance. And people say, you're having a bad day? I'm not in a wheelchair. Every day is Christmas. That tenacity that I used to become one of the youngest SEAL snipers, that fight that I used to walk again, and is what I'm going to take for you in Congress. God willing, you vote for me and I become your congressman. Our country is in big trouble. I think about our young people being able to buy a house, being able to afford gas and food and everything else. It's so hard for you to graduate, get a job, and raise a family. Safety, I mentioned it earlier, we are less safe as a people. Murder is up, especially down the road in Richmond, up 77%. And these failed policies, we need leadership. Because if we don't get Trump back in the White House, if we don't get Hung Cao in the U.S. Senate, and God willing, I'm in your Congress, I don't think America can make 4 more years of these America Last policies. I have no problem with immigration, but it should be legal immigration. And we should not be bringing people into our country that don't want to speak the language and integrate and don't love our country. You come here, you meet somebody when they swear in, it's the most patriotic thing in the world. They know more about our history than we do. It's pretty amazing. So I ask for your prayers, I ask for your vote, and please get 10 friends, and not me, but we will lock arms, treat each other with respect, and make our country the best place to live, work, and raise a family, I think our best days are ahead of us. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you for being part of this.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Witt, you have 5 minutes for any concluding remarks.
Perfect. Thank you, Hampton-Sydney, again, and the moderator, and all of you for showing up tonight. It's truly been a pleasure. Just a little bit about myself. Born and raised in Amherst County, Virginia, rural America. I've used this campaign to let folks know I'm a country girl. Grew up without running water. We processed all our meats, we grew all our vegetables, we preserved them, pretty much lived off the land. You all would think of it as being organic right now. We call it living. My values are faith, family, justice, and community. And I spent 30 plus years in corporate America in a multinational organization, 10 years as a small business owner, and 4 decades of doing community advocacy. So I want to be your voice in Congress because I am District 5. I understand corporate and business, and I understand rural America. So I want you to leave here thinking, because this is a pivotal election. This is not about Democrats, Republicans. We're testing our belief in the Constitution and our rights and freedoms. So when we think about what you care about, if you care about having affordable health care, the GOP has promised us repeal and replace, and he's got concepts 9 years later. If you care about your Social Security, they're talking about it as a Ponzi scheme. Elderly, retired people work their entire life for that benefit. My position, let's increase the pay-in rate so that billionaires will pay their fair share. If you care about child care, affordable child care, you want to think about voting for me. If you care about elderly care, you want to think about voting for me and our platform. If you care about climate change, we got a group of people who actually think it's a myth. And we're witnessing it every day. Droughts, tornadoes, hurricanes, it's showing up in your inflation because all of our insurance rates are going up. If you care about reimagining education, then join me in fighting for career technical education because 60% of our young people are graduating high school and not employable. And if they are, they're making bottom of the wages. So what have I heard when I've moved across this district? And I've crisscrossed it many, many times because I'm determined to be your voice. What I know is you're afraid to go to school. What I know is if you take away a woman's rights, what else is left? Because right now, the GOP platform is basically questioning our religious freedom, my personal religious freedom. Because if I don't line up like they do with Christian nationalism beliefs, then suddenly I don't have religious freedom anymore. I'm a God-fearing woman. I don't have to say God every 5 minutes. I have a relationship with God. I got it. And young people are telling us, will I ever afford a home? Will I ever buy that car? We are fighting for opportunity and growth for everybody. We're not marginalizing people for who you are and what your choices are and where you grew up. We speak one thing on the GOP side about being inclusive and everybody. And by the way, meritocracy is a myth. It's a myth. Get it out of your head. Nobody makes it on their own. We make it through relationships and networks. And I want to be your voice because I've been where you are, and I want to be that person that reimagine, number 1, protects democracy. Number 2, advances justice. And number 3, restores hope in District 5 by expanding and reimagining education and economic growth for the entire district, not just some of us, but all of us. Thank you.
We've reached the conclusion of our forum here this evening. Thank you to both of our candidates for your thoughtful and thought-provoking responses. Thank you all for being here, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Hear, hear.